Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled Trees Bite Fence Neighbor. I moved to California in my early 40s. Although I had grown up on the East Coast, I could not help but admire California's beauty and the mountains that were surrounded by a pink sunset every morning. Plus my kids were grown now, so we had a little bit more freedom to move around and travel as we so pleased. My husband and I ended up purchasing a gorgeous home in Northern California. It was nestled in a smaller neighborhood that was in a beautiful mountain range. We were surrounded by big beautiful trees, a flowing creek, and the beautiful environment that Mother Nature had to offer. Everything seemed so peaceful. Well, until we met one of the new neighbors. Right off the bat, she was not exactly the friendliest. Although she spoke to us and introduced herself to us, she was noticeably short with her words. She also made a comment about how so many people were finding out about this small beautiful area. I was not sure if that was just a general observation or if she was throwing a petty comment our way because we were the new people of the neighborhood. Regardless, we still enjoyed the neighborhood and started planning to do some small renovations to our property. The house was in fairly good shape, but there were just some small details that we wanted to change. One of the things that we had wanted to add was a small cabin on our property. The purpose of the cabin was to serve as a sort of guest house. A cabin was a lot smaller than a regular house, but I still wanted to go about it the right way. We made sure we had a lot of the right permits, approvals, and legal documentation to avoid any trouble. But unfortunately, that does not protect us against trouble from neighbors. When our neighbors saw construction works and city workers coming over to approve permits and whatnot, she immediately asked us what we were doing. Although I found it odd, she had such a concern for what we were doing. I just ignored her and told her we planned to put a small cabin on the right side of our yard. "Oh, so right next to my house?" she complained and rolled her eyes at us. While the cabin would be near her property, it was still well within our property lines. I let her know that it would not be an issue and that we were planning to build the cabin in a way that would not get in anyone's way or view. Of course, she did not want to hear any of this, so trying to talk to her was just a lost cause. We ended up going through with our plans to build the small cabin. It was small, but it was beautiful, and it really fit in with the design of the home and the mountains. It also met all the coding requirements and city requirements, so everything was going great. And ripe stars, I suppose. By coding requirements, OP meant the city code regulations, requirements, etc. Anyway, until our neighbor decided to put up a wall of trees on her property line right up against the cabin. I was baffled. I know I don't have the right to tell her what to do with her property, but it just seemed so disrespectful to complain about the plans we had for the cabin and then basically put up a wall of trees right next to it. I was not sure if I could really do anything about it, but I was going to try. She was purposefully blocking our view of the beautiful mountain range, all because she did not like our log cabin, which we made sure that the cabin would not block any views of the mountain for her. So my husband and I filed an official complaint against a neighbor. It might have been a silly move, but we had just moved here and I was not going to put up with blatant disrespect from a stranger already. In our complaint, we stated the complaints she had about our cabin and concluded that the trees put up were a way for her to get spiteful with us. Of course, the court denied the notion and it ruled out in her favor. The trees were on her property line, and even if she wanted to put them there to build a fence or a wall, well, she had the right of creating that privacy for her home. And it was just me being petty, but I decided to find out what kind of trees they were and plant some of my own. I was able to find out that the trees were a type of evergreen and that many people planted them to create a sense of privacy or security, so go figure, right? So I had my husband work with the local landscapers and got a hold of several medium-sized trees. We planted them on the opposite side of the yard to where the cabins were and made sort of a fence out of them. This ended up blocking her view of the adjacent mountain, which of course she was not happy about. Although she complained to my husband, she did not take any further action. Obviously, because there was not much she could do. She had already won in court and done the same thing with making a wall of the trees, so she just had to sit there and accept it. And yeah, Ripe Stars, that story is just a classic. If you don't want me to be happy, I will make sure that you are not happy as well. And I guess in this story, in the end, no one is really happy just for the sake of pettiness and getting revenge. I think that's what you call an eye for an eye, and it just shows that that kind of revenge is just not always the best. I suppose in this case it would have really been better to come to a compromise together instead of going this route. But who am I to judge? And since you enjoyed the last IRS related revenge story so much, I just looked for another one. This one starts like this. I had this really close friend, let's call her BSB, backstabbing witch, who was talking so much crap behind my back without me ever knowing. I always had doubts that something was fishy, but I was not able to prove it. One day, a random guy who was a closer friend to me sent me all the text BSB sent him. She was saying stuff like, I was just a trash not good enough to be friend with her, she was 22, and that I was fired. BSB said all these things without ever telling me that there was a problem between us, so I had no idea what was going on. I confronted BSB by showing her the messages. Maybe I was a fool, but I was expecting explanations or apologies. It got bad. Instead of taking the blame, BSB said my life was over because there was rumors that a guy leaked nudes of me. All this was my fault supposedly, and I should move out of town, dye my hair because I was just a bad girl here. I replied by saying I would have told her and defended her if something like that ever happened to her. I ended the friendship there. They have a family business and I used to help them with some work they couldn't do themselves. I was pretty much the only person in the area to do my job, so they were not in a good situation. Her mother called me a few times saying she needed some help, but I was not changing my mind. It was a no for me. I waited for a year, I waited for apologies, but they never came. Out of the blue, BSB sent me a Facebook link about soap making, because I like soap, like nothing happened between us. Maybe it was to remember herself that she never did anything wrong, but I lost my mind there. This is where the fun starts. Revenge is a dish best served cold. Well, or in this case, ice cold. I used to help them with their family business for the past 8 years. I knew details of how the business worked and I knew pretty much everything on how they hid money from the IRS. I called the IRS and told them everything. I told them how they hid the money and where they could get all the proof of their real sales. Their real sale is around $30,000 a month and they probably declare half of that. When someone was paying them cash, they would duplicate the invoice, giving 2 invoices with the same number to different clients. The catch is, each item they sold had to be inspected by a professional. That professional also had to add a piece to the item before it was sent to the client. The IRS only had to ask for the invoices at that professional, and they have all the proof of BSB's real sale. They were also shipping every item under their care and the buyer had to pay a $100 fee cash to the shipper. There is even the details of it on their website. What a bunch of idiots. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you have watched until here and enjoy IRS revenge stories, then please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support. I am very grateful to have you in my community. The next one is titled Never Come Back. Before I begin, please note that I have worked in food service. Everyone involved in this story has worked in the food service/bar industry at some point in their lives, and I'm a strict 20% or more tipper regardless of service. So many things go wrong during a bad service experience that either happenstance or coincidental that blaming the server is usually misguided at best and malicious at worst. All that being said, this woman was a piece of work. A few years ago, I was involved with a theater company as a director and actor. Sometimes I would help out with their fundraising, and we were gathering a committee together of about 8 people to meet at a bar/restaurant and chat through plans on a weeknight in Queens. To set the scene, it's a small bar/grill, probably about 15 spots at the bar and 10 to 15 tables. The place was half full and our group accounted for about a third of the patrons in the joint. Most of us were drinking, some of us were eating full meals, and a couple people were only staying for a short while, so they just had water or a soda. The bartender was covering all the tables as well as the bar. You would think that would make her busy, but somehow it did not faze her. While we waited on refills and silverware, she was content standing by the bar and talking to her friend. The conversation with the friend would make it into the 10 to 15 minute territory, while all of us were doing our best to catch her eye when we needed another beer or someone new arrived. I had 2 beers during the evening, and I would have loved to have had 4 since we were there for a while. When we were able to get her attention, the bartender would shuffle over, take an order from one person, and turn to walk away. When someone would stop her and say, "Hold on, sorry, I need something as well," she would and turn back, all while rolling her eyes and cocking her head to the side as if to say, "Fine." She did not write anything down, she forgot drinks and meals and was just all around the worst server any of us ever had. Even after all this, I was still planning on tipping the standard 15%. That is until she came over with the check. After another long conversation with her friend at the bar, threw it on the table and said loudly to our group, "The next time you guys come in here, everybody has to order something," before storming away. We were all dumbstruck. Our group accounted for probably half the money running through the place at night, and we would have been ordering a lot more from the bar if she had ever bothered to check on us. The group decided unanimously to leave a bad tip. None of us had ever been treated so poorly by a server. I left $1 or so, most people left coins or nothing. The high point of the evening was when we were on our way out. She picked up the check off the table and yelled after us, "Oh nice, fine, get the F out of here and never come back," as everyone in the entire place turned and stared. My friend went over to her and said, "I will tell you exactly why we gave you what we did," but the bartender was having none of it, continuing to scream, "F you, get the F out." The revenge, that night I went onto every restaurant review site I could find, Yelp, Greasy Spoon, some local New York City sites, you name it. I told the story in as many characters as the sites would allow. I was so steamed I had to vent somewhere. I also found out the next day that multiple people from our group had done the same thing. It felt pretty satisfying though. At this point I only thought of it as a petty revenge, but it soon became pro. A few weeks later, I was talking with a friend of mine who got hired at this bar. I told him the story and he said, "That was you guys?" I asked him how he knew about the incident. He told me that the bar owner took online reviews very seriously. When he saw all the terrible reviews come in on the same night with the same story, he knew exactly which bartender it was and she was fired the next day. And you know, Ripe Star, speaking of online reviews, if you leave any negative reviews in Western countries, there is really nothing you have to be afraid of. However, in some countries, especially in Thailand where I usually live, the reality is a little bit different. Essentially, if you write a negative review, even if it is true, the person in question, aka the owner of the establishment, can sue you for defamation. And I remember not too long ago, maybe 2 years ago, there was a hotel guest who complained about the hotel on Google Maps, or maybe it was agoda.com, and basically the hotel owner then sued the guest after seeing the review. And obviously, since the guest was a foreigner and the owner was Thai, as far as I can remember, the guest then found himself in a very uncomfortable situation. Therefore, when I'm in Thailand, I really prefer to only leave positive reviews, even though I haven't had many negative experiences to begin with. And the next one is titled Confession Revenge. So, I work in a call center for a mobile phone provider. You phone me up, I see every last personal bit of detail that you have provided with us, especially your phone number. On average, I would take anywhere from 60 to 100 calls each day, most of which are not pleasant. I understand customers feeling irate, they are annoyed and upset. I am okay with customers shouting at me or getting frustrated, because if I was in their position, I would be the exact same. So I do my best to help, say my goodbyes and forget all about you. Only thing I can do. But there are some calls, some people who are truly horrible. Scum of the earth who feel that because there is a network of sound waves between you and them, that they are above you. Better than you, that you are not even human, and they are the ones I really hate. Backstory: a month ago I received a call from a customer, and before me she had spoken to an advisor who promised to waive her $800 bill in international charges. PS: always check the website for your service provider. Many companies have a maximum charge limit for international rates, usually around $400. However, they will never tell you this. You need to challenge them on it. Right away I could smell BS. No one would have promised that amount of money because they would never get the authorization for it. I explained to her that I would have to raise a call listening request to see what was agreed upon. She came back and said, "Oh no, it's okay, I recorded the call," to which she played the recording back to me. Lo and behold, the advisor did promise this, but whatever. She cannot use that recording in a court of law, and we have no way of verifying that recording, so I still had to raise the request. I made sure to ask her if she's recording this call. She replied no, so I made sure to warn her that if she was recording the call I was not okay with it and would have to terminate the call. She sternly said she wasn't, and we carried on talking. In the end, I advised her the call listening can take 3 to 5 working days, and if she wanted a separate call back about the issue, I can raise that for her now. She did, so both were processed, both of which are handled by separate departments. Done, dusted, call over, I went on lunch and swiftly forgot about her. 2 weeks later, someone on my floor calls me over and says, "This girl wants to talk to you. She said you promised to call her back and that you would credit her account." I looked over into the account and it is her again. I explained to him what happened. He could see both requests had been made but have yet to have been picked up, which happens a lot unfortunately. He could do nothing else but to raise the issues again with the department and tell her that I would phone her back after 10 PM because we close at 9 PM. I didn't know he did this at the time, but obviously he was trying to fob her off. This is a man who I've not once ever in my 2 years working here seen get slightly annoyed, and yet this girl had him pulling at his hair. I watched in awe until walking away to make sure I was not caught in the crossfire. Today I come back onto the floor after my break and someone else's manager walks up to me and says sternly, "You must take this call." I ask why and he says, "My advisor has had this girl on hold for half an hour because she refuses to talk to anyone else. She says you promised this and that and the other, and yet nothing has happened. She even has a recording of you promising this." After some complaining and trying to explain myself that the manager had put his foot down and sat me down in front of the phone, that was directly linked to Satan. "Hello, you're speaking to OP, how can I help you?"
"Where the F have you been?"
"Please don't curse, I'm under no obligation to take this call and I'm doing it for pure goodwill."
"Don't give me that. You promised $800 off my bill and a callback that very day. It's a month later and nothing has happened."
"I'm very sorry to hear that, but if I do recall, I advised you that I would raise a callback, not one from myself. Again, I'm sorry these issues have not been resolved, so let me try and fix it for you today."
"BS, listen to this."
She then proceeds to play a recording of me promising her money off her bill. She had manipulated it poorly to make it sound like I had something I had never done. If I do recall, I specifically asked you if you were recording that call, to which you said no, so you lied to me and you have a proven history of lying and recording calls, so unfortunately, I'm no longer comfortable to take this call anymore. Have a nice day.
"Oh what, you're running away now because you know I'm going to put you out of a job?"
Sorry?
"Scared, you're just scared."
Her, I assume boyfriend, shouts from the background,
"You better be scared. We have proof that you lied to us. You guys always lie, hence why we have to record these calls. You will be out on the street without a penny to your name. I'll make sure of it."
Sorry, but as the topic of this conversation now has little relevancy, she cuts over me making
blah blah blah
noises mocking my obviously foreign accent.
"That's all I hear from you cows, blah blah blah,"
as her and her boyfriend laugh like a pair of elementary school bullies. At that point my blood was boiling, so I terminated the call without another word. Now this is where my apology comes into effect. This is one customer I could not forget about, one customer I could not brush off my shoulder. I sought revenge. As mentioned before, I had access to her mobile number, address, heck even her favorite color. So I made a note of them all on a bit of scrap paper and tucked it away for later that night. I searched the web for every text subscription service I could find, bonus points if they charged, and signed her up for it. I know our policy on these matters. Third party issue, customer will have to deal with the third party charging her. So I made sure she were to receive at least 10 chargeable texts each and every day, making sure that she would rack up a phone bill with a service provider who will provide no leeway with the payments. If she was going to try and scrounge me for $800 that could and would affect my earnings, then I was to make sure she did not have a penny left to her name. Now it is 2 days later and I am completely guilt-ridden. So I'm sorry for what I've done, I'm sorry I stooped to your level, but good God, do I feel good about it. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.